Hello, here we are, once again. Just get rid of all the odds and ends here. John Beattie, International Director of the British People's League. Dinosaur News, produced by theBritishPeoplesLeague.com. June the 6th, 2014. As you're all aware, 70 years ago, the invasion of Normandy to free Europe. 70 years ago. D-Day. Invasion Day, Landing Day. It's hard to reflect. Just thinking about it makes a person uneasy. War, war, war. But hey, it's human nature. No justification for anything. But man may always be meant to war. To protect territory, to protect loved ones. History is always written and rewritten by the victors, of course. But the brave troops that went over weren't thinking of what the war was all about, why the war was all about. They had one basic thought: for freedom of speech, and no one has the right to conquer someone else's territory. And so many thousands of the cream, young white people died on both sides of the horrible war. Innocent civilians, and I'm talking the innocent civilians, I'm not talking civilians who worked in munitions, etc., etc., but actual people, perhaps out in the farms. Both sides suffered. In any case, it was to end the horrible war. So I can't be as dramatic as some of these professional announcers. I don't intend to be. I'm actually wiped today, but I had to make this appearance to prove I'm still alive and the Dinosaur News is still on air. Those of you who follow my activities closely, or those of you who suffer on the blind list because I pepper you with so much news, just trying to keep you stirred up, well, you well know that this Monday past, I filed nomination papers to be a candidate for Deputy-Reeve in the fall October elections coming up in October. There were a couple of good plugs on FM radio station outlets. One in-detail, in-depth newspaper write-up. So-so. A couple of smears, but in the main, pretty good write-up. But as previous videos have said, we're going to keep the race for Deputy-Reeve separate from the British People's League as such. Sure, it involves this spokesperson here, yours truly. I'm sure there will come opportunities when I'll want to say something connected with the British People's League, but the Deputy-Reeve candidacy is a separate entity on its own. But I'll keep you posted how it's going, and right now, as of this moment, had a couple of invites already to all candidate meetings. Looking forward to that. But anyway, a timely letter received today, D-Day, this historic day, the 70th anniversary, received from Upminster, United Kingdom, the motherland. Dear Sir, with the peoples of Britain and Europe rising up against the globalist European Union, which will bring it down to restore. The peoples rising up will bring it down. Will bring down the European Union. The people rising, European Union is going down. Just as what went down 70 years ago. Bring it down to restore the proud nations of Europe and Britain. Restore the proud nations of Europe and Britain again. Here we have the pro-White Commonwealth Anglosphere United Kingdom Independent Party winning most seats in the local elections. It is vital the countries of the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand uniting as an alliance to rival or counteract autocratic Russia or China, not by war, no one wants that, but by trade and military cooperation. Britain made a grave error by abandoning the Anglosphere in favor of Europe, though through our neighbours, the Anglosphere is the real future for the United Kingdom. Isn't that great, hearing that on D-Day? Opened the mail today and got this neat letter from a patriot in Upminster, United Kingdom. That's what we're all about, the raison d'etre of the British People's League, as expressed in this fine handwritten letter. It's a pleasure to see a handwritten letter as such. A handwritten letter rather than the usual computer jazz. It has more of an emotional touch, more of a feeling to it for sure. Britain made a grave error by abandoning the Anglosphere, our real future for the UK. Thank you. P.S. I like your YouTube videos. And a couple of email addresses. Yours sincerely, Adam. Well, that's a pleasure. Adam, thank you very much for having sent a special note that arrived on D-Day. The couple of interviews and filing the nomination papers for the local election business in October, it has worn me out, folks. Because of my controversial past, I expected the worst, and the press wasn't too bad. But I'm going to draw the line. I'm going to be a sitting duck for news media. I have a message on the telephone answering machine. Voters, please leave your questions and your name. I think that's a neat move. If voters are serious and they really want to know the score, the scoop, they can phone. We've had a great offer from a friendly voter to do a separate web page for the election itself. I've had to think it over carefully. I mean, you know, this person is offering their time and expertise. But I've turned it down for probably a peculiar reason. Voters can click into a website and just read over, skim over quickly. That's very good in large numbers. But if I really want that person's vote, I want the personal touch. I mean the personal touch, at least with a live voice, even though it's on a voice machine. But I will answer the call. So that's the route I've chosen to go. Is people, well, for those in the local area listening to even the YouTube, it's 705-286-5112. 705-286-5112. But especially voters, I encourage to phone. If I happen to be away from the phone, then leave your question, please. That would concern the municipality. That's what we're talking about. Cottagers and local people alike who are paying taxes in Minden Hills, Ontario, Canada. Okay, so that's enough of that now. But we do want personal involvement. I wasn't going to go on today. Now you're hearing me crying the blues again. I can only do so much. And, you know, I don't care what project it is in life, whether it's cleaning up your garage or your basement or whatever the list is. It all takes time. And I knew right off the bat when I followed this person's suggestion that why not run for the position, the little things involved. And the little things add up. We've got a great flyer in the works, a fantastic flyer. I should have thought of it. Now I am getting clumsy. We've had a proof. We don't want to show you the proof. Let's see. Okay. So here's the flyer. Now, the flyer is being donated by a patriotic person. It's going to be handed out in color. A very catchy color combination. I don't know how I describe it to you, but this is the black and white off of the computer. Elect John Beattie for Deputy-Reeve of Minden Hills. 20 years of paralegal experience equal negotiation skills for Minden Hills Council meetings. Well, believe me, 20 years in the courtroom, battling back and forth with the other side, whether it's a fellow paralegal or a lawyer for one of the sides. And of course the deputy judges. So it's 20 years of skill in negotiating. And I can apply that immediately to the municipal council. We'll fight for you, the residents of Minden Hills. And of course our contact, John, the court agent at bellnet.ca. And of course this is basically for the election in the fall. But what the hell? It's still on the fringes of the British People's League, isn't it? It involves yours truly. So I just want to say how pleased we are with the poster. And thank you, Andy, for the terrific poster. And I think, as I said earlier on, we've already been invited to some all-candidates meetings. Hopefully the posters will be here in time to distribute. So back to D-Day. It's almost like a form of Memorial Day, isn't it, really? Landing on those beaches, the slaughter. They did it so we could have freedoms. Now, sometimes our governments at different levels get a little bit too control happy on that freedom aspect. They often want to control freedom of speech, including the news media of our great country. So I'm really pleased with having that note on the telephone. Voters, please leave your questions. I want to bypass the news media. Let's keep it between the candidate and the voter. To hell with the news media. Who needs them? Nobody. Let the voter talk to the candidate to find out what the scoop is. Other news for the British People's League, as you know, we don't do the daily news routine, the horrors of the news out there, but of course we have to offer sympathy for 3 dead Royal Canadian Mounted policemen. We've had a lot of bad press lately, a lot of bad mistakes, a lot of Mounties have made a lot of bad mistakes over the last few years, but that doesn't take away from the young recruits, young constables being murdered. 3 of them at one go, and that's a sad day. It's a very sad day, and sympathy to all their families for sure. Well, we've been busy on behalf of the British People's League. Our blind lists are really getting tight-knit, getting all kinds of great advice for future programs, what we can emphasize. So I'd like you to keep your spirits up out there, especially those on the blind list. And again, as people have heard many times over, if you wish to get on our blind list and get the inside scoop, the inner court for our cell structure, then let's get to know you. How do you get known? You email us, britishcanada@gmail.com. britishcanada@gmail.com. Those in the motherland who wish an instant contact right in the motherland, of course, it's Candor. C-A-N-D-O-U-R, Candor League. Candor.org.uk. It's good to know people are enjoying the YouTubes. There'll come a miracle one day and I get back on track at 5 a week. Now that the hurdle of getting the nomination papers is in and the first wave of the press. See what happens. But we're here. Maybe I should put some time in and get a haircut. Well, as I said earlier, I wasn't going to do a show today, but you people are worth a YouTube on D-Day, that's for sure. So I felt obligated. And I know, what's the big deal, Beattie? But again, you know, you're setting yourself up to pose, not pose in the phony way, but in a responsible, intellectual fashion, hopefully. So you have to be psyched up. You have to be ready to deliver a few minutes of good talk, good delivery. So we'll be back at you on Monday, unless Beattie has another tinge of nervous breakdown or whatever, June the 9th. Keep the spirits up. There's one thing about the D-Day invasion. It was a uniting of all of the white Allied forces. You think about it. Yeah, there are a few non-white tribes out there fighting for freedom, that's for sure. But the majority were white. So that's something to think about too. And then we've turned our nations over to the jaws of the third world. So, in a form of remembrance almost as a remembrance service. You think of D-Day, that's for sure. And in spite of all the misgivings people have about Prime Minister Harper of Canada, he's over there remembering, and he had instituted in his reign the good old red ensign, an equal spot in the memorial fields of France. The equal spot for the good old red ensign that you see flying above my head behind me here. And the other thing Mr. Harper has done that's sort of been squashed by the liberal world press, mentioned a few months back, he's actually welded, along with Cameron, and I don't like to talk about the other stuff the Cameron guy has done in Britain, Prime Minister of Britain, but in this case, Harper has welded the Canadian embassies with the British embassies around the globe. Think about that. That's been squashed. So there's people like Harper who still remember our British roots and our European cousins. Are you kidding? Our European cousins are fine cousins. It's 2014. Okay, we'll talk at you on Monday, and I'm sure glad I did this YouTube today. Picks the spirit, joie de vivre, back up. Have a good weekend. Talk at you next time.